Okay, we are going to look at how to complete science fair forms. So science fair forms are created by Society for Science in the Public, who governs all international science and engineering fairs that occur and their affiliated fairs. Those are fairs that involve the ability to give students bids to International Science and Engineering Fair, which is also called ISEF. A school that sends students to a regional or a state fair in an effort to get bids to ISEF needs to comply with the ISEF forms, and they can be pretty daunting for a lot of students. I do require all of my honors students to complete a science fair project, and I would like to guide you through the process of completing those forms. So if you go to my website, which is chrisclements.com, it's up here, chrisclements.com, then scroll down toward the bottom of the page, the home page, and you'll see something called Forms Wizard. This is a fabulous creation by Society for Science that enables us to go through and indicate what our research is going to include and thereby get the proper forms assigned to us. And it gives us links to the proper forms that are fillable. It's just fabulous. So what I'm going to hypothesize with this first run through is that I'm doing a science project that involves conducting surveys of human participants, both under 18 and over 18. I'm going to conduct my research at home and at school, and I will not put any of my subjects under any form of stress. So, knowing that, I'm going to look at number one, will my experiment include, and I'm going to check human participants. We're not going to consider vertebrate animals to be the same as human participants in science projects. It doesn't involve any of these other things. I'm not going to gather any tissue from the humans that I'm conducting the survey with, so I'm going to go to next page. On the next page, it says, will your experiment be conducted in one of the following sites? So read through these, and I indicated that I would do it at home and at school. And then it gives me a little blurb telling me that it may require a regulated research institute, but what we're doing, as how I described it, does not involve that. And then the third one here is continuation. Some projects are continuations from previous years. I didn't indicate this one would be, so we're going to act like it is not. Next page. Number 4 says, will your proposed experiment include any of the following? And because we are doing nothing on vertebrate animals other than humans, we are going to say none of the above here and then go to next page. Will your proposed experiment involve humans by including any of the following? And I indicated I would do surveys that are non-invasive. I'm not going to do any emotional stress on anyone, so just surveys. Will your experiment involve any of the following groups? I told you it would involve minors, folks under 18, and adults over 18. And that it involves a review of pre-existing human data sets or human data. This one does not. So go to next. Number 8, will it include any of these following things? And as you read through these, certainly no survey that is non-invasive is going to include anything like prescription drugs, firearms, explosives, or radiation, etc. So we're going to say none of the above on this one and go to next page. And then will your experiment include, and it goes through the list of possible things that you could have forgotten. Notice it says working with human or animal fresh tissue. You're not working with fresh human tissue if you're doing surveys. So we'll say none of the above on this one. And then next page. And then it generates a summary for me, and it tells me what forms I need and gives me links to them. It's incredible. So I'm going to go through each of these forms. I will go ahead and tell you that every science project that my students have to do does require forms 1, 1A, a research plan, and form 1B. Additionally, at the end of the project, an official abstract form will be included upon which the abstract will be written. For the project at hand, however, I have to include Form 4 and an informed consent, which is an informed consent that's designed by the student. It indicates that a qualified scientist Form 2 may be required, but from what I've described to you about this particular project, we're not going to include Form 2. So let me go through Forms 1A, the research plan, and Form 1B with you, and then I'll look at Form 4 and informed consent. Then I will go through the Forms wizard again and put in some more complex project components, and we'll see what forms it tells me I need, because I certainly have students who do their work at regulated research institutions who need to do more forms than these simple 1A research plan, 1B, and even the human participants form 4, and informed consent. So let's look at checklist for adult sponsor. Notice the name of the form is the checklist for the adult sponsor. The adult sponsor of my project, the human survey project, is going to be my parent. I don't need a professional person, a psychologist, to be my adult sponsor for this project. So I would fill in my name, my project title for my adult sponsor, who in this case again is my parent or guardian. And that parent or guardian is going to check numbers 1 through 4, and then under number 4 going to check humans. Under number 5 we'll check adult sponsor, student checklist, which is 1A, research plan project summary, and approval plan 1B. It is not being conducted at a regional regulated research institution, or nor is it a continuation project, so those will be left blank in this example. Under number 6, I will check that human form will be needed. I will check that that testing student designated invention or prototype human participants or appropriate institutional IRB documentation is needed. Well, we're not testing the nature of, I don't know, some response to caffeine or something like that, which I don't let my students do anyway. So we don't need qualified scientists Form 2, but we do need informed consent and human participants Form 4. So those would be checked. Again, humans, testing, student designed invention or prototype, human participants Form 4, and sample of informed consent. In this project at hand, no vertebrate animals aside from humans will be used. We will have no potentially hazardous biological agents, nor will we have hazardous chemicals, activities, or devices. The adult sponsor prints his or her name, puts the date of review. Let me take a moment for this. The date of review for this particular project must be before experimentation has been conducted. Before experimentation has been conducted. It needs to be when you are thinking about what you're going to do and you've made a decision on what you will do, but you have not yet begun it. That is the date that goes here. The phone number of the adult sponsor and the email address of the adult sponsor needs to be on this form as well. All right, so that's Form 1 that every student competing in a science fair has to do. Form 1A is called the student checklist. So the first one was the adult sponsor checklist. This is the student checklist. We have a student team leader. Sometimes team projects are involved in science fair projects, and in that case there has to be a team leader. The team leader or the only student's name goes here, and the grade of that person, the email address of that person, and the phone number of that person. And then any team members are listed here. Those team members will also be filling out Form 1, by the way. Title of the project, the school. If you're one of my students at Caddo Magnet High School, the official name of the school is Caddo Parish Magnet High School. The school phone is 318-221-2501. The school address is 1601 Viking Drive, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. You need to put your adult sponsor's name in here and that person's phone and email address here. And does it need SRC, IRB, or IACUC or other pre-approval. With this particular project that we're doing, we're conducting a survey of humans. You will check yes. Is this a continuation? We indicated no, it is not. And this laboratory experiment or data collection actual start date, you will record your actual start date here. End date, you will record when you completed the project. Where will you conduct your experimentation? In this particular example, we had school and home. Because we have home, we're going to put the home of whomever and the address of that home with the street address, the city, state, and zip code, and then the phone number at that home or the cell number associated with that person's home. This is the next part called a research plan and project summary. Notice it says at the top, research plan, project summary, instructions. A complete research plan project summary is required for all projects and must accompany student checklist 1A. This is not a fillable document. This is a document that instructs you how to make your research plan and conduct your project summary. So, as you read through your instructions, it makes it quite clear what needs to be in the research plan and project summary. You need to have the rationale of your project. Rationale. You need to have the research questions, hypotheses, engineering goals, or expected outcomes. You need to have your procedures, risk and safety information, and data analysis that you will use to analyze your data or your results. And then you have to have your bibliography. If you have human participants research, you're going to have to describe the participants. You're going to have to describe how you got the participants, what you will do. In this case, we're just doing surveys. What the risk assessment is. One would hope with what we're doing as a survey that we have no risks involved, and therefore you need to do nothing to minimize risk. The protection of privacy. How will you protect that person's privacy? And then your informed consent process. And this is where you would include a sample of your informed consent. I'll show you the informed consent document in just a bit. So again, this is your research plan. It follows Form 1A. So far we've done Form 1, the adult sponsor checklist, Form 1A, the student checklist, and then I've gone over how to write your research plan / project summary. All right, let's go back to our rules wizard, and it tells us we have to do approval form 1B. Well, approval form 1B is to be completed for each student, including all team members and parent. Now, in this particular hypothetical experiment of the surveys being done, I told you my parent was going to be my adult sponsor. Well, my parent is also the parent guardian on this particular form. The student's printed name is put in. The date acknowledged, notice it says must be prior to experimentation. And the parent or guardian's printed name and date acknowledged must be prior to experimentation. So far, every date that's been on a document has been before experimentation has occurred. And then, because of the nature of this experiment, we are going to fill out 2A, which tells us that we have to do it if we have human subjects. So we're going to have the SRC IRB chair's printed name. Well, an SRC is typically not going to be at the school level. An IRB will be. An IRB stands for Institutional Review Board. An IRB consists of 3 people. At a school level, it would consist of an administrator. At Caddo Parish Magnet High School, that person is Cheryl Thomas, the queen of all science fair knowledge. And then it consists of a medical professional. At our school, it is our school nurse and an educator. And at our school, I am the person who is on the IRB as the educator. So I would need to sign each of these as I am the IRB chair. And I do that, notice, before experimentation occurs. You have to get these forms to me before experimentation occurs. All right, so we've done 1A, the research plan slash project summary, and Form 1B. Now, in this particular example, we're going to come back to abstract after we finish human participants form. We have to do human participants form, Form 4. Well, Form 4 has to be done before experimentation, and you have to get IRB approval before experimentation. So this is yet another document that has to come to me before your experimentation. We have the student names, the title of the project, who the adult sponsor is, then the phone and email of that adult sponsor. Then it must be completed by the student researcher in collaboration with the adult sponsor and indicating to me you've submitted your research plan to the IRB for approval. You've attached any surveys or questionnaires that will be used, any published instruments that were legally obtained, attached a an informed consent that will be used if required by the IRB. And then, are you working with a qualified scientist? In this example, I said no, we were not. So notice this next section is for IRB use only. Well, because I'm the chair of the IRB, I read through the documents that I've been handed, which are Forms 1A, the research plan or project summary, 1B, and this document 4, as well as the informed consent. So I'm going to indicate, typically with this kind of project, that it is approved with full committee review, which is 3 signatures that are required, and that the risk level is minimum, that a qualified scientist is not required, and a designated supervisor is not required. I will require that minor assent is required, that parental permission is required for those minors, and that informed consent is required for all participants 18 years old or older. I rarely approve a project with expedited review, which means that only one signature is required. And those occur if, pardon the ship's clock that's dinging over there, those occur if human participants will only provide feedback on project design or invention or prototype. No personal data will be collected and there are no health or safety hazards. Well, I'm going to collect some personal data from my subjects and I'm going to use that in whatever experiment this is that I've hypothetically designed. And then you'll see down here we have a medical and mental health professional. That's our school nurse. The educator is myself, and our school administrator, who is Shell Thomas. This is human participants Form 4. Alrighty. After Form 4, I have to do an informed consent. Well, unfortunately, they do not have the link to informed consent. And what the informed consent is, you can go to my homepage and there's a link to the science fair forms, and you'll see informed consent there as a link. I can show you that right now. As a matter of fact, we can go to science fair forms, and we can scroll down and go to a sample informed consent statement. It's simply providing you with a document that you can fill out so that you don't have to create your own. So you can create your own and it can have its own design, but this is just an example for you to use if you don't want to create one from scratch. So again, that's under Science Fair Forms on my website at the bottom of the home page. So the other document that I indicated would need to be done is the official abstract form. An official abstract form is to be completed after the experimentation has occurred, and it's fillable as well. You have, I believe it's 22 categories on this document to choose from, and you've got a checklist down at the bottom. And if you get to go to ISEF, you get an abstract with a gold seal right there. 2 copies of it with a gold seal. It's pretty cool. And they make like 50 copies for you to hand out to people while you're being judged and on the public display day. It's just cool. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so I've gone through in the rules wizard a project that involves humans. Let me quickly go through one that involves institutional, regulated research institutions, what I'm trying to say, and that it involves something like human or animal tissue. Let's say you're using murine tissue, which is mouse tissue, And it tells me again that warning that I might need to do some other forms, and I know that. So we're going to do human or animal tissue and then do next page. And let's say that I will be doing it at a local university laboratory. And let's say it is a continuation. Okay. And then will it include any of the following? A non-invasive, non-intrusive behavioral observational study of vertebrate animals. And let's see. We will say that it will involve tissue obtained from an animal sacrificed for a purpose other than my project. It is a hairy mess if you choose tissues obtained from an animal sacrificed for your project. It really should never occur for a high school student to have an animal sacrificed solely for his or her project. The animal should be sacrificed for the purpose that includes more than that person's project. So I'm choosing that it's sacrificed for a purpose other than your project, and you're using tissue that was obtained from that animal. Then I click next page. Then it says, will your proposed experiment involve humans by including any of the following? We're not doing humans on this one. Will it involve interacting with the following groups? And we're not doing any people, so we're going to say none. Does it involve a review of pre-existing human data sets? No, it doesn't. And then I click next page. Will your experiment include DEA controlled substances? Potentially hazardous devices. Let's see. We're going to say none of the above on this one. I'm looking for the ability. No, we're not going to say none of the above. We're going to say chemicals on this one because we use some chemicals in staining the tissue. So let's say that we're going to work with animal fresh tissue, and that will be it at this point. And now I get my summary. It tells me I need Form 1, 1A, research plan, and 1B, the abstract, because everybody's got to have that. I told it was a continuation form. I told it that I would be doing it at a university laboratory, so now I need Form 1C. I told it that I was doing it at a university laboratory, which means there's a qualified scientist there. I told it that I'd be using some chemicals, so now we have to do Form 3. I told it that I'd be using fresh tissue from an animal, so now I have to do Form 6A. And I told it that I was using fresh tissue from an animal, so I have to do Form 6B as well. All right, so really quickly, I'm not going to go through 1A, research plan, 1B, and abstract again. We're going to look at the new forms. Continuations form is exactly what it sounds like. I'd put in my name. I would put my current research project title, goal or objective, change in methodology, and variables studied with additional changes. And then I'm going to include title of previous research, change in goal, change in methodology, and so on for any of the previous 2 years. And then I have to attach the abstract from the previous year and from the 2 years back if it is appropriate that it go that far back. And then I print it, give it a date. Notice it says it has to be completed by the previous, let's see, it doesn't tell us by when it has to be done. I'm going to tell you that it must be done before experimentation occurs. The date on this signature has to be before experimentation occurs. All right, then I go to Form 1C, which is a regulated research institutional industrial setting form. I put the student name, the title of the project. Did you or your proxy, which means someone else in the laboratory, mentor, provide substantial guidance to the student researcher? Well, I look at that and I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because it says in bold up here, to be completed by the supervising adult in the setting, not the student. And notice it says after experimentation. This is critical. It is after experimentation. It is the only form that is to be dated after experimentation. I believe that is a correct statement. I'll see when we get to 6A and 6B, but I believe that is correct. All right, the student conducted research at my site. And then I've got to answer from the mentor's viewpoint. So again, your mentor has to complete this, which means you have to give this form to your mentor. Pull it up, send a link to this form to your mentor so that that person can complete all of this. And notice the date signed must be after experimentation. So all of this has to be completed by your mentor, not by you. All right. So then we have qualified scientist forms. Sometimes you have a qualified scientist who is your mentor, and your mentor is let's see, going to complete this form with his or her name, educational background and degree, and then experience or training as it relates to the area of the student's research, the position, the institution, the address of that institution, the email and phone number. Have you reviewed the rules? That person needs to check yes here. So make sure that you go over any forms that need to be done. Will it involve any of the following? It's going to involve vertebrate animals. So I'd check no for humans, yes for vertebrate animals. I'm going to say yes for potentially hazardous biological agents because I'm using tissue from an animal. No on DEA controlled substances. Was it part of a larger study? Yes, it was part of a larger study. That's why the animal was sacrificed for a larger study. And will you directly supervise the student? If that person is your primary investigator and that person is not going to be with you at all times, but let's say a postdoc is going to be with you, that person will check no here for will you directly supervise the student? And if no, who will directly supervise and serve as a designated supervisor? That postdoc's name would go here, and the experience and training of that particular postdoc would go there. Then the qualified scientist printed name goes here, signature and date of approval. This has to be before experimentation. Before experimentation. And let's see, the designated supervisor in this case that I'm citing for you, it's a postdoc who would print his or her name, the date of approval, before experimentation, phone number, email, and then print it and sign it. So that's qualified scientist form 2. It tells me I need risk assessment form. So I go to risk assessment form, and this has to be completed before experimentation. I put the project name, title of the project. It's to be completed by the student researcher in collaboration with the designated supervisor and or qualified scientist. So you answer all of these questions. Have to answer all of these questions. And then the designated supervisor, in the example I'm giving you, this is the postdoc would print his or her name here, sign it, and date it before experimentation. Position and institution, phone or email contact, and then experience training as relates to the student's area of research. Notice it's checks and balances. It just keeps going over some of the same stuff. Then I have form what is this, 6A, potentially hazardous biological agents and risk assessment form. It has to be done, yep, you guessed it, before experimentation. I have a student's name, title of project, and then I'm going to identify any potentially hazardous biological agents to be used in this experiment. It is to be done in collaboration with your qualified scientist and designated supervisor. So you're not responsible for answering these questions alone. You get the help of your PI and of your postdoc. All right, training, let's see, that's all self-explanatory. And then let's see, this is super important. Experimentation on a cell line or microorganism used in the study was not conducted at a regulated research institution, but was conducted at a BSL-1 or BSL-2 laboratory. The study has been reviewed by the local SRC and procedures have been approved for experimentation. Okay, well, let's see, we're doing what? Vertebrate animal tissue here. And we have the middle one, experimentation on the cell line or microorganism used in the study was conducted at a research institution, was approved by the appropriate institutional board upon experimentation. If your project involves cell lines or microorganisms, this one doesn't. If it involves that, you're going to have to get the origin of the cell lines and the date of the IACUC or IBC approval. Your PI can explain that to you. And then experimentation on the cell line studies conducted at a rate which does not require pre-approval. That's not going to be a case with anyone, to my knowledge. Everyone's going to require pre-approval. And then the qualified scientist or designated supervisor completes this certification and signs it, and then the SRC has to sign this. And if you are one of my students working at University Health, the SRC chair is Dr. Hugh Price. He is on the ninth floor with animal services. So you will need to get his signature on this form before experimentation. Do not wait until after the experimentation to do this. All right, let's go back. We now have Form 6B, which will be the last one we complete on this example. And it's a human vertebrate animal tissue form. So we have a student's name, the title of the project. We have what vertebrate animal tissue will be used. We're going to say fresh tissue was used and where will the above tissue be obtained, blah, 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 blah. Your mentor will help you determine that. If the tissue is obtained from a vertebrate animal study conducted at a research institute, attach a copy of the IACUC certification. Again, your PI and your postdoc will know what to attach here. And then your designated supervisor or qualified scientist will complete this bottom portion and again date it before experimentation occurs. I cannot stress the importance of these forms if you plan on going to higher and higher level science fairs. You must abide by these. You must have your dates correct. You must have signatures. You must, if you're printing these and filling them up by hand, complete them in ink. Never complete an official document in pencil. Okay, I think that is all that I need to say at this point. You will have my link to the Science Fair Forms wizard on my site. You will have a link to the Science Fair Forms on my site. You may certainly look at my ethanol efficiency paper to get an idea of how to write your research. Partly your research plan with your bibliography, but for my students, they actually write a research paper as part of their project, as most projects do have a research paper associated with them. Okay, guys, I think that's it. So I'm going to go to QuickTime, and I'm going to quit QuickTime, and that should end my recording. Thanks for listening.